Hey guys, my name is Paul and I'm doing this video blog to tell you about the experience that I had with my wife and breast cancer. And unfortunately we did not win our battle against breast cancer and she is no longer with us. I've been wanting to do this blog for some time now to try and capture my thoughts on how I'm doing after losing her, and also for our son. So she's been gone. Tomorrow will be 3 months and 1 week, and I kind of keep track of the monthly anniversaries of her departure, but it's not a fascination for me. So where to begin? Well, my wife Christine and I met 20 years ago this April, in a couple months, 20 years ago in church, and really liked each other and kind of hit it off from the get-go, and almost got together but didn't. Another guy moved in the interim between us hanging out and me asking her out, and they committed to a relationship. And excuse me, when I contacted her to ask her for dinner, she tells me years later that she felt punched in the gut because she really liked me. So I'm probably going to ramble a little bit here, but and I'm not going to do any editing. This is all going to be low tech and just me and my printed pictures. This is us. Let's see the camera focus. This is us moving to California after we got married in 2011. Actually about 5 years ago and a week that picture was taken. So yeah, we met 20 years ago in church, almost got together, didn't. We knew each other in the singles group for about 4 or 5 years. I knew that she was a very strong, committed Christian, very serious about her Christianity. In fact, someone said to me, "She's too much of a Christian." And is that possible? So yeah, she really took and lived her faith seriously. And so we knew each other for 4 or 5 years, and then we kind of lost contact. I moved to California. We met in Florida, and I moved to California. I was out there for 10 years. She moved to a different church. We lost contact. In 2008, she found me on Facebook. She friended me, and should back up the bus a little bit. Part of why we didn't get together, or part of, well, actually, the gentleman that dated her became my roommate. Ah, there you are. And there might be tears ahead. That wasn't even a tear. That was just leaky eyes. But anyway, the gentleman that dated her, rambling all over the place. Anyway, he became my roommate, and when they broke up, he told me all the things that were wrong with her and how wonderful he was and the whole thing. And I believed him, and then the gossip train started, and he said she was overly emotional. Well, when I told her that years later, she said, "Well, yeah, that makes sense, because during that time my coworker was stealing my commission, so yeah, I was a little bit emotional." So unfortunately, the gossip train got a hold of the over-emotional statement, and I listened to it, which, again, my loss. And don't gossip. It does no one any good, and it usually ends up hurting people. And it's usually a sign of a weakness of your own self-esteem. So make you feel better about yourself by putting somebody else down. Hey, just telling it like it is, right? So anyway, fast forward back to 2008. She friended me on Facebook, and I'm like, oh, the overly emotional chick. Well, alright, it's the Christian thing to do. How wonderful of me, right? Sorry, my glasses are dirty. Hard to see you through these dirty glasses. Now I really can't see you. It's just everything's a blur. Sorry, it's late. It's 9 o'clock. It's past my bedtime. So we friended each other on Facebook, and she saw posts, I saw posts, and like, I looked at her pictures, and she was a beautiful gal. And this is the day we got engaged. Yeah, I ruined the story. Well, obviously she's my wife, so yeah, there's the ring. There's a beautiful ring. Anyway, she was a beautiful thing, and I really enjoyed looking at her pictures on Facebook, and then thinking to myself, too bad she's so emotional. Idiot. But anyway, all that to say that, where was I? In 2009, no, early 2010, um, I'm sorry, that was a long pause, and I'm thinking I'll edit that piece out, but I'm not going to edit this, so you just have to stare at me, which you already did if you're still watching. Gosh, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm used to editing and taking all this garbage out. Anyway, somewhere along the way, early 2000, somewhere I visited Florida, and I posted a picture, and she saw it. She said, "Are you in Florida?" I wrote back 2 hours later. She said it was days later, but it was 2 hours. I can verify it on Facebook. And I said, yes. She felt very blown off. See, I'm wrecking the story already. But it bugged her. And it bugged her all the way home that I kind of blew her off. And it bugged her all the way to home group, this new home group that she was going to. And she said, Lord, if I even need to consider this guy, let him be here tonight. And he's not going to be here tonight because it's a brand new home group. And 5 minutes later, I'm walking in the door, mutual friends. So anyway, nothing happened right away. And somewhere in there, and my brain's a fog from everything that's gone on the last few years, but especially the last few months. But she messaged me early 2010 and said, question mark for you, me. And I have this friend I work with. I think, she was born overseas, you were born overseas, you like to travel, you might be good for each other. And I never do this, I never play matchmaker. So I said, yeah, hey, I'm not just a client of the Dameless and Desperate Society, I'm also the president. So yeah, I'd be interested. And anyway, the girl wasn't interested within 2 weeks, and Christine was already saying, well, if she's not interested, maybe I should be. I'm like, whoa, it's the overly emotional chick putting the moves onto me, and felt the Holy Spirit whisper in my ear and say, just chill out, just try it. Well, here we are, almost 6 years later, and it was an amazing experience. Yeah, April we got together for get to know you again, kind of over Italian ice, and chatted for a while. And she told me she dated a couple guys, but then she hadn't dated in 10 years. I'm like, whoa, what's the matter with you? What's the matter with me? I hadn't probably dated in 10 years myself, but yeah, she said, I just don't want to date for the sake of dating. I want to date someone that I'd like to eventually marry, someone that has those qualities. And I guess she felt like maybe I had some of those when she said, why am I setting this other girl up that I work with when I really like the qualities that he has? And, I often thought of her as the too much of a Christian person, and is that a bad thing? So anyway, so we had a nice time over the Italian ice, and then the next day we were supposed to double date. Well, we blew them off, and we just had a date to ourselves, and that really liked each other, and thought, maybe there's something here. And then she was doing a business trip to California, and she arranged to spend a weekend in the town that I was living in, stayed with friends, and we had a really nice time. And we talked pretty quickly about, so if we were going to date, which I think we already knew we wanted to, would we do it for 6 months, a year, 2 years? She's like, oh, definitely 6 months. I'm like, okay. But by the end of that weekend, we first saw each other on a Friday. By Sunday, there was definitely some sparks, and I think we knew we were kind of heading in the right direction. So a month later, I was going to Yosemite National Park with my adopted bro and his family. I said, "Hey, can you get the time off and join us?" She's like, "Probably not," but she asked her boss, and the boss said yes. So we had a really nice time at Yosemite. She had her own tent. Everything was on the up and up. There was no hanky-panky. And I'll just tell you now, I was 46, she was 43 when we got married, and we were both basically pure at that time, after 20 plus years of being single and adults. And it was God redeemed that time, and neither of us married from the 20 years ago that we met to the time that we got married. So anyway, so yeah, things progressed pretty quickly, and I came to Florida for 5 weeks, stayed with friends to see if we could do everyday life, seeing each other every day after work. And it went well, and then we just kind of moved towards getting married. Before we did get married, we went on a medical mission trip together. She had gone on 6 or 7 medical mission trips to India, and I think this was number 6. There's the Taj Mahal, and there's us. Yes, that's us. About a month before we got married in India together on a medical mission trip, and it was just amazing. And then we got married December 2010. We went to Australia to visit my mom, who had been fighting bowel cancer or colon cancer for most of that 2010 year. And we got to Australia, and Mom was hanging on. I had seen her before the India trip, but she was hanging on. She met us at her house. When we arrived, she was waiting for us. We had a couple hours to chit-chat. Next morning, we woke to voices. She had called the visiting nurse. They got her into hospital. And we get to see her every day for a week, and then a week before Christmas, she was gone. But at least they got to meet. My wife and my mom got to meet. So already went through one battle with cancer. And then, so my wife Christine and I extended our honeymoon in Australia. And then got back to living, moved her to California, moved a Florida gal to a 7,000-foot ski mountain. That lasted about a year. Work was not really what it had been, so it was time to try something new. We had to come back to Florida to fix up her townhouse that sat in Florida for a year unrented. Am I giving too much detail here? I'm just kind of telling you my story. It's been a pretty neat story. We felt really blessed. I'm just trying to get through it so I can tell you what's happened the last 6 months or so. But so yeah, we moved back to Florida after about a year and a bit of marriage, and fixed up her townhouse. And living in Orlando single, I did not enjoy. I was traveling all the time, just trying to get out of there. But living in Orlando with Christine was a completely different experience because I had someone to share my life with. She was my best friend. We really clicked. We really enjoyed each other's company. We'd often say, I love you, and I like you too. And we enjoyed just sitting around the house and not doing anything. We would do things together, but we were just as happy just hanging out, talking. It was very special. So, yeah, so we lived in Orlando for about a year. I freelanced. I do video production, so I just took jobs as they came. And then I found a job with a church in Melbourne, Florida, on the coast. And I always said to her, if we're going to live in Florida, let's live near the ocean, right? And she loved the beach, so when that job came along, it was perfect. And we felt like God directed us in every step of our lives together and prior to. And but especially when we got together, just meeting 20 years ago, never getting with anybody in that 20 years, so that when we did come together 20 years later, or actually it was 14 years later that we we married after we first met. It was like two 20-year-olds getting together and enjoying all those first things in marriage, giving yourself emotionally and physically to each other for the very first time, and never giving that to anybody else. It was pretty remarkable. But yeah, so back to more recent times, we moved to the Space Coast of Florida. It's just south of the Kennedy Space Center, and I took this job, but her and I had booked a trip to Israel with the church that I ended up working for. And here she is, standing with the city of Israel in the background. It's kind of hard to tell. Here we are on the Holy of Holies, on the Temple Mount. And this is a really bad picture. Here we are in front of the Western Wall. Yeah. So that was an amazing experience. Here we are in Joppa. Yeah, Simon the Tanner's house just behind us. Anyway, so yeah, we got to go to Israel together. That was an amazing experience. Prior to taking the job, she was working with the India Missions Organization. So her and I got to go to India 3 times together, and Tanzania once, and Nepal once. So she went a total of 9 times to India, and we also visited friends in England, and visited her grandfather's birthplace in a coal mining town in the west of England. So she got to travel a lot, which was pretty neat for a gal when we first met. Didn't like to travel. So, all right. So trying to get through our time together, because I want to tell you about our battle, which I kind of started off with half an hour ago. So I took the job. Then we went to Israel. That was my pre-existing conditions that I had to go on this trip to Israel, which was amazing. And one of the gals that was on our group, we had a get together a month later, and she asked Christine, "Are you pregnant? Because I've been praying that you get pregnant." And we're like, we're pretty comfortable in our singleness or our coupleness, and we're thinking we're too old to get pregnant. Again, I was 48 at the time. No, 49, 50, and she was 47. But about a month later, well, she started thinking about when that lady asked her, and she's like, I am kind of late. And a month later, we did a test, and she was pregnant. So at 47 years old, she gets pregnant, and they wanted to do genetic testing. We can abort the baby if it's not going to be healthy. He said, no, we're going to take whatever God gave us, and that's what we stuck with. And we left it open to God from the get-go when we first got married. We didn't try to not have a baby. We didn't try to have a baby, but it just happened. We figured God would say, "You shall bring forth," and He did, and we did. So July of 2014, just before the 4th of July, our little baby was born. I'm not going to show you a really good picture of him, because I don't want it spread all across the World Wide Web. But here he is. He's very cute. There you go. See, I'm not going to move it around too much. Okay, there you go. That was him. He's a cute little guy. And, yeah, just a blessing from God. And completely healthy. She was 47 years old. She was in labor for around 12 hours, and then she pushed for 5 hours, and he was sunny side up, and they didn't catch it until he was in the birth canal, and they couldn't push him back. And so it was they were prepping her for C-section, and then the main midwife came in and said, "Well, he's close." And they were like, "You want to have this baby?" She's like, "Yes!" And so she pushed and pushed and pushed, and out he came. And she was amazing. Amazing trooper. I don't know how she did it. She was a very strong, determined lady. But anyway, so yeah, had a beautiful baby boy, and then she had some tailbone pain from the birth because of just the pushing for 5 hours. At least that's what we think. And then that went away finally after about 3 months. She had a month or two of kind of pain-free life, and then she started developing pain in her wrists, like right below the thumb and up into the thumb. And we thought it was just because she was breastfeeding. That's all he ate, was he was breastfed, so she was holding him a lot, so we kind of put it off as that. Now, I'll back the bus up now to when we first got married. I was aware that she had some cysts in her right breast, and maybe a very small one in her left breast, and she said she had them since she was 18 years old. And they would come and go, especially if she drank coffee, which I've heard other ladies say, yeah, that's what they tell us. It's like, okay. But when she was pregnant, they were there. When she started breastfeeding, they seemed to get a little thicker. And she said, well, it's probably just I can't remember, the milk ducts getting clogged. I can't remember, there's a name for it. You're probably saying it right now. Also, let's back up the bus to when we first got married. I think it was, when those cysts were present, I asked her, please go get a mammogram, because she never had, in her 43 years at that point, she had never had a mammogram. She might have had it examined, and people say, it's just a cyst. And I should have been stronger and said, no, you will get a mammogram, or we'll get counseling. I don't know. What do you say to someone that doesn't want to get a mammogram? I wish I had have done a Google search for alternatives to mammogram, because there are alternatives out there. There's thermal imaging, which is not radioactive, which is not a pancake smasher, and can potentially be more accurate in showing that there's something there than a mammogram. I've heard stories of ladies that go back 2 and 3 times because they're told they're all clear, and yet they can feel something. They're like, no, there's something there, and the 3rd time they're like, oh yes, there is something there. So, nothing is perfect in life, but part of why I'm doing this video is because I can't bring Christine back, but I can share her story to encourage you to either go get checked yourself or tell your spouse, tell your friends to go get checked, because had she gotten checked in our first year of marriage, I wouldn't be doing this blog. I might be doing a completely different blog, like how we found breast cancer early on. Alright, so let's jump into the thick of it, shall we? Pardon me. That's a Lewis and Clark mug. A bit of a history buff, Alright. So, I had asked her to get a mammogram, and I'm pretty sure it was the first year of our marriage, but somewhere in the first 4 years of our marriage, she said, I don't want to get a mammogram because they're going to tell me I've got breast cancer and take my breasts off. Yeah. I would rather have a flat-chested wife than no wife. Yeah. Now, I found out that her great-grandparents on her mom's side both died of cancer because they were deathly afraid of doctors. I don't know if that's a family line of thinking that she picked up on, or that she even heard about that, and for some reason she became scared of doctors. She was definitely into chiropractors and chiropractic care, and she got a lot of relief. She had neck problems from a rear end accident when she was 18 that gave her migraine headaches, and she got a lot of relief and from the chiropractic care, and the chiropractor actually said, I'd like to use your x-ray as an example of what a perfect neck should be. So there was definitely merits to it, and I'm not against it, but I'm also not against using modern medical technology to find out what's going on inside your body. If you know something's wrong, then you can pursue other natural alternatives or a combination of. Alright, so let's get into the thick of this then. So yeah, she started having arm pain, and then during her breastfeeding, it felt engorged. That's the word, engorged. Like the milk ducts were clogged. That's what she's told me. She told me, yeah, I think it's the milk ducts are clogged. That's why you feel that mass there. That mass was probably a tumor of some sort growing, and we should have had it checked. And I should have said, let's go have it checked. Even when she was pregnant and we visited the midwives, they physically checked her. Oh, it's probably just a cyst. So, unfortunately, nobody really took it seriously. Nobody worried about her, including myself. I really should have said, look, I don't care if you are anti-mammograms or not, but you need to get it checked. You need to have some kind of screening. So, fast forward to 8 months into my son's life, our son's life, and maybe a few months before that, May of last year. Today is February 27th, 2016. So May, 11 months ago. All right. 11 months ago, she was outside with our little boy in his walker, and she went to pick him up, and her back went out, and it was all she could do to get him back inside and find her phone and call me and call the neighbors across the street to come help her while I was on my way home. It started to get better, but obviously something was wrong. But again, we just went the chiropractic route. They would give her an alignment, and she'd walk down the hall, turn around, come back, and her back would go out. So, eventually it became two different chiropractors were seeing her. One of them said, we probably need to get some imaging of some sort. Meanwhile, she was becoming to be in so much pain that for about a week, right around her 48th birthday, I was sleeping in the bed with our little guy, and she was on the couch in the living room trying to find a position that was comfortable, sometimes kneeling on the floor, laying on the couch. And we had an appointment with an orthopedic surgeon on a Monday after her birthday, and by the Thursday before, she was in so much pain, I said, look, we got to take you to the emergency room. And here's one point that I learned along the way is emergency rooms I always thought were for like emergencies, like when you're bleeding or you're broken a bone or something like that. But in a situation like this, had we gone to the emergency room a month earlier when she was in pain but not in crying out in pain all the time, they probably would have taken her in and done all the tests they needed to, because when we did take her in that Thursday, they went to work pretty quickly. They did blood tests. They came back with extremely high calcium numbers, double what they should be, which either indicates kidney issues or cancer. And then they did a liver they did a liver ultrasound, and I was watching, and I saw some strange looking images on the screen. I'm like, oh, please, God. And then, so they admitted her into the hospital. They got some pain medicine into her, which finally gave her some relief. She was nauseated, though. She couldn't eat. She was in the hospital. Well, she had a tomato allergy, and they kept bringing her food with tomatoes in it. So it was a challenging couple days in the hospital, and then about 6 days after she was admitted, I get a call waking me out of a dead sleep from the kidney doctor saying, blah, 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 this is me, and blah, 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 and we think it might be cancer. I'm like, what? And yeah, like I said, I was just barely awake, 7 a.m. in the morning, and I don't know why he was so abrupt and not very helpful. And then the oncologist calls maybe 9, 10 o'clock that day and kind of gives me the bad news. They had done an MRI and basically said she's got cancer in her lower spine. It's metastatic breast cancer, meaning it's metastasized from the breast and spread around her body. The MRI report read like a horror story. It basically said masses in the liver and lungs, too numerous to count, destructive metastases in the lower part of the back, in the spine, and in her right hip. Her right hip had been giving her all kinds of pain. So this was the beginning of May 2015, and I said to the oncologist on the phone, I said, okay, let's not beat around the bush. What's your prognosis? How much time does she have? And he said 2 months without treatment, 2 years with treatment. So I've got a 8-month-old in the house with me, and I get handed this kind of news. And we always felt like God had really blessed us with a really special story of love later in life and getting married, in our mid-40s, like two 20-year-olds, and just really having a great time. And then miracle number 2 was this little miracle baby that was completely perfect and just sharp as a whip. He's an amazing little guy. And then we were praying later on as we battled through this, that miracle number 3, that she would be healed. And you know what, interestingly enough, when we first got married, and probably because my mom was battling cancer at the time, she shared with me this book that had been distributed at the bookstore where she worked when she was younger. And it was about a lady that was 35 years old, pretty much an identical diagnosis to what Christine was given. She went through chemo and radiation and was told to go home and die. There's nothing more we can do for you. So she started researching, and she did all kinds of amazing stuff. Like she went on a 12 or 14-day juice fast where she slow juice, not the high-speed juicers, but the slow churn juicers, which don't kill the enzymes, which is what kills all the bad stuff in your body. Organic apples and carrots. And I think she drank like 64 ounces of fresh juice each day for 14 days. Things like that, nutrition, and then coffee enemas and colonics, because as cancer dies in your body, the dead cancer cells can be highly toxic, and you got to get rid of them. And your immune system really is birthed in your gut and your intestinal system. So getting all that garbage out and flushing it out with coffee enemas helped her, and 5 weeks after this devastating diagnosis, she was cured. She survived 10 years cancer-free, and then it came back and it got into her jaw. And that was probably partially because of dental procedures that weren't done properly, allowing cavities to become infected. Anyway, this is all kind of based on a lot of research that I've done in the last year. But anyway, Christine had this book. She introduced it to me when we first got married, and I thought, well, okay, we've been handed this devastating news, but this lady made it through. We can make it through too. But I think part of the issue was the pain medications that they put Christine on, Percocet, just did a number on her digestive system. She couldn't keep anything down half the time, and trying to get her to do a juicing diet was near to impossible. I think we did 2 glasses of apple juice, and so I've got this really expensive juicer sitting downstairs. To complicate things on the beginning of this, Christine was kind of in denial. She's like, we didn't go into the hospital for cancer. We thought it was a bulged disc, so I reject this. And she was being kind of unrealistic. I'm like, babe, read the read the MRI reports, which she had. But I think she was just trying to keep it away from her conscious self and suppress it, so that not to give it any credence in her body, which is a good thing to do with something like that. But she was in so much denial that we didn't do any treatment for the first month, and she actually thought she was pregnant, and some of the numbers came back indicating that she was pregnant, and she kind of got focused on that. But the numbers didn't change in a week or two, which it was probably just all the other stuff going on in her body that was making the potential pregnancy numbers high. So, yeah. And then we finally got around to looking at doing some chemo. We also got in with one of her chiropractor recommended this natural clinic that sent a lot of supportive supplements that boosted her up, and we would have gone up there to Georgia to see them and get these IV mineral infusions, but she was too weak just from the first week in hospital. Really did a number on her, and then yeah, it was amazing how that took her down really quickly. But then they sent some of their supplements, and within 48 hours she was coming way back up again. So that was interesting. But they said to do everything, because they got all the medical records, and they said, they're not one of these weirdo, just do our stuff. They said do the chemo, they said do the radiation, and do our stuff too. And their stuff was more, in a lot of ways, more supportive, although they did have one pill that she would take every 4 hours around the clock, and it was like 14 cups of decaffeinated green tea and capsicum oil, like a major antioxidant that had killed cancer in other patients. But maybe again, hers was so far advanced and so spread around the body that it just we couldn't get ahead of it. All right, so I'm going into massive detail here, but this is the beginning of the battle. We did 3 rounds of chemo, 3 weeks in a row. It played havoc with her lymphatic system. Her legs swelled up, and we had to work really hard to get her lymphatic system to drain all that out. She lost her hair, of course, which is a real shame. I don't think I have any pictures of that, because I didn't really want to print off any of those. These are pictures just to kind of put around the house, too. Yeah, she lost her hair, which for me was kind of when it became very real and very emotional, seeing her lose her hair, because she was a beautiful lady. She had beautiful long hair. Here we are on our 3rd anniversary. That rough-looking guy, but just gorgeous flowing hair. And that's not a good picture of her hair. But so the Bible says a woman's hair is an honor to her. That's a pretty good one. Yeah. So there you go. She had beautiful hair, and yeah, it was kind of tough when the hair went. So after the 3 weeks of chemo, which was right around our son's 1st birthday, we headed up to Georgia, stayed with her aunt, and did 3 weeks at this clinic of IV infusions, and it really brought her up, and just gave her a lot of energy. So that was July, and then I had taken a 12-week Family Medical Leave Act from work so I could care for Christine and our son, and somewhere in there, early in April, her mom had come down for a couple of weeks, maybe a month, and then she had left. We had some different friends come and help, stay with us for a week here and there, which was a huge help. But boy, I got to tell you, ladies, I now kind of know what it's like to be a mother as far as the housework side of things. I felt so good when I got 4 loads of laundry done. I felt so accomplished. And I was running from 7 a.m. or whatever time the little guy woke up till 10 p.m. at night. And I lost close to 20 pounds in that 3 months that I was off work taking care of everybody. So anyway, yeah, so that was the end of July. went back to work, and she was doing quite well. But every Sunday I would work in the morning at the church, then we'd get in the car and we'd drive to Georgia, and then Monday, Tuesday she would do infusions, IV infusions, and really bring her up again. And then we'd drive home Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday night, and get home about midnight, and then I'd go to work Wednesday through Sunday. So yeah, it was pretty crazy. But it was a good time. We got closer. We repaired a lot of issues that had crept into our marriage. She had really started to become somewhat critical of me, and I'll just share this because I put that down to postpartum depression manifesting itself in a just kind of a critical nature, and taking small circumstances and blowing them way out of proportion. It's like, why are you like this? And I've talked to other husbands, and they said, yeah, it kind of can be that way. So again, this is nothing against her, just, this is what life dealt us, and we got through it. And that trip to Georgia, the 3 weeks that we went for the first treatments at the clinic after her chemo, it was a very healing time, and we really got close. We got back to where we were the first 2 years of our marriage, which was kind of, the first 2 years they say is your honeymoon. It really was for us. Again, while we're talking about this, I was freelance. I didn't work all the time, and we had a lot of FaceTime in the first 2 years. We probably spent more time together in our first 2 years looking at each other, talking with each other, sharing time with each other than a lot of couples would in the same amount of time spread across 15 years. So, just looking back, we've had a lot of huge blessings in our 5 years together. So I'm trying to count my blessings and look at the good things. And I'll just interject. It's been very emotional, but it's getting better. And a friend that I met over Christmas time, she was 25, 36 weeks pregnant, and her husband was a sheriff's deputy, went to answer a call of a drunk with a gun and didn't come home. So, ultimate shock in her situation. I had 6-7 months to prepare for the potential of not making it through this, and this other friend didn't have any time to prepare. So, okay. So yeah, we did, for 5 weeks, we did the drive to Georgia on Sunday, come back on Tuesday. So kind of a total of 8 weeks of treatments that she did at the clinic, and it really helped her. In August, she was doing so well. We did a trip to the beach, and she was walking around without her walker. She was, basically feeling like she was getting better. She had gone into the hospital here and there for rib pain and hip pain, just to kind of get the pain under control. And they did an MRI at that point, and they found the masses in her liver and lungs 40% reduced. That's kind of significant. We put it down to the natural stuff that she was taking, but it quite possibly, even according to one of the people at that clinic, said it was probably the chemo that did it. And maybe we should have continued with the chemo. She didn't want to. She wanted to go natural options, and it was her choice. I supported her. Some of the research we were doing was suggesting that chemo was not the way to go, that it was more harm than good. In her late stage, with it so advanced, it might have been a better way to go. So I can't give you the answers on this. I can only suggest you do your research. Again, please feel free to leave comments if you want me to do updates to this video and answer specific things in more detail. I'd love to. I have no problem sharing this story whatsoever. In fact, I want to share this story because, like I said, I can't bring her back. But if I can help one person not go down this road and get in front of this thing, that's why I'm doing this. In the 1900s, cancer was 1 in 100 people. In the 1950s, it was 1 in 10. Now, in the time we live in the 2010s, cancer is 1 in 3 people. That's how often it strikes. So, I mean, between me, Christine's mom, who's living with us, and Christine, there's the statistic played out right then and there. Excuse me. Am I talking too much? This is a video blog. I'm supposed to talk. You can talk back if you want, but not going to hear you. Anyway, all right, so we did the 8 weeks of treatments. She was doing really well. She walked down to the beach by herself. She felt like she was getting on top of it. We felt like we were moving in the right direction. And then she started having a lot of nausea. We were trying to stay away from pharmaceutical meds, although she had a pain patch on her 24/7. We were trying to limit the amount of other pharmaceuticals she was doing. And one of the things we probably should have done was the prescription anti-nausea pill, which she took once or twice. It was on the tongue. She didn't like it. That might have been the key to controlling her nausea so she could eat better, because her weight started going down. I think the disease started getting the better of her. But September 19th, we went back to Georgia for a visit with friends on a farm that we had stayed with that was incredibly healing. And we went to the clinic with the idea of getting another series of mineral infusions. And they did a test. They would test your biofeedback and let the body tell them what was going on. And they said it wasn't the cancer causing the pain. They said it was parasites. And they had diagnosed that earlier, but and given her oral, drops to take, but she wasn't doing very well with getting them in. And so they gave her an infusion of the Vermitox, the anti-vermin, anti-parasite detox. And it felt good going in, but afterwards she, became ill and did not eat very well for the whole week. We didn't go back to the clinic the second day. We went home, and she was kind of up and down eating-wise. And it was kind of the beginning of a downward spiral, I think. She said to me on a Friday, I can't take the pain I had today again. So Saturday, her mom had arrived that day to come help, and she's still here, thankfully. Do I say so a lot? I'm sorry. Hope I'm not bugging you. We did a coffee enema, and we had done a series of coffee enemas, and the first time we did them on our first trip to Georgia, it was amazing what came out, and I won't go into detail, but it was more than she had consumed. So we're thinking, okay, this is good, this is the garbage coming out of her. And if she felt 50% before the enema, she felt 80% after the enema. And we'd do several hot water bottle bags full of coffee and then water, warm water. And but this time in September, the end of September, we did a coffee enema and then a shower. And I think she just got really dehydrated at that point. She had been, vomiting that whole week prior. And I put her on the bed to get her hospital bag packed, and then got her up to get her clothes on, and she was kind of out of it. And I said, okay, let's stand up. And she said, okay. And she didn't stand up. So I had to lift her into the car. She kind of rolled forward as I put her in, almost collecting the gear shift. And then by the time I got her to the hospital 10 minutes later, she was completely out of it. I had to lift her out of the car into the wheelchair. She went into the ER. She seized twice. They thought she had 2 mild strokes. They put her into the ICU overnight. This was on a Saturday. Tuesday, she was on Dilaudid, which is 10 times more powerful than morphine. So she was out of it for several days. Although she did wake up at one time and she's kind of screaming, "Don't touch, don't touch, don't touch," and turning around in her bed and wrapping her wires around herself and finally got her to stop long enough to hit the button and say, "I need some help in here." It took 4 people to put her back in bed and hold her down. So she's a pretty powerful, strong lady even at this point. But her mom and I were back and forth to the hospital, kind of trying to be with her, someone with her, several hours a day. And I think we even spent some overnights with her. And on Tuesday, she woke up for her mom and looked at her. And then it was my turn to go in, and she looked at me, through this fog of the drugs and being in a comatose state. She looked at me, and I said, "Hi." And she looked at me again, and she says, "Hi." I just about fell out of my chair. And then she kind of mumbled, and then she says, "Aloysius," which is my nickname. So anyway, that was a glimmer of hope, and just a testament to her strength, her will. When they would test all the things at the clinic, they would test her will to live, and it was always 100%, because she had this little guy that she wanted to live for. And yeah, so the doctors were pretty much negative. They had given up on her. They said she might have a week left. The calcium had come back up. They had gotten it back down with drugs. So the calcium coming back up would indicate maybe the cancer spreading into the bones again and leaching the calcium out of the bones. But by Wednesday morning I got a call from the doctor. Dr. No, I called him. And he says, "Hey, your wife is responding to my commands, sticking out her tongue and blah, 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 and we need so she can have some quality of life while she's still with us, and yeah, let's make that happen." So I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." So they got her home to hospice care 2 days later. And the first couple of nights were entertaining, screaming and yelling and, "Get your father out of the box, and you'll find it a lot easier to go upstairs if you don't go through the ceiling tiles." I'm like, okay. For crying out loud, and quit being a jerk. And I'm like, I'm just trying to give you your medicines, I'm not being a jerk. And by the way, being a caregiver can be an extremely stressful and trying time, because you're dealing with someone that isn't always necessarily in their right mind, or is dealing with devastating news. And I think she did really well. And several times she said, "Thank you for loving me through this." And I said, "What else? What else would I do? This is my job as your husband, and this is what I should do. This is what we should do for each other, right? For better or worse, sickness and health, till death do us part." Didn't expect it to be this soon. Anyway, okay, so they got her home into hospice care. They had a hospital bed here, which was pretty handy. They'd come in and bathe her 3 days a week. They would have bathed her 5 days a week if she wanted it, but we did 2 days a week ourselves, and she was doing well. And every day she would kind of leap forward, like 3 days progress. So again, we were encouraged. We were believing that she would do well. We never gave up. We prayed and believed that God would heal her. And I told her, I said, you need to be prepared. You are going to be full-time ministry, sharing your testimony about how God healed you. So, so she was doing well, but she was really getting thin. We couldn't keep her weight up. She was nauseated a lot, and in the beginning of November, she had to go back into hospital, and I think she said, "I'm starting to feel that way that I have in the past," which in my mind said, we're going back to hospital to try and get things under control. She was doing really well. She was sitting up in bed, chatting. It was so nice to take her to hospital conscious and aware of what was going on, as opposed to, completely out of it. It was kind of refreshing and hopeful. And so I said, "So you can probably be a millionaire by the number of times I said so if you got paid $1 each time, right?" She was in hospital for a week, and they got her calcium down from 16 or 18, which is dangerously high. It should be about 8 to 10 and a half. They got it to 12.5 and they let her go home. She was supposed to come home to home health care, a bit different from hospice, with the idea that they would have IV infusions ready to go. Well, it took 50 hours for the IV infusions to arrive, and by that time she was not consuming things by mouth very well. And she had about 4 days at home. She wasn't draining liquids very well. Her face had puffed up. And we needed to get her back into hospital. And so the following Monday, she went back into hospital and was not doing well. Her in the ER, when we admitted her, you could see the sides of her liver. It was kind of growing. So I guess you could say the signs were there that she was not doing well. A couple days into her hospital stay, she got very yellow and jaundiced, I guess is what you call it. And somebody came on a Friday to pray with her, and she told me about it on a Saturday. And she said somebody came, and she's kind of talking through. Somebody came to pray with me, and very difficult to understand. She was in a lot of pain, and prior to this time, the hospice palliative care doctor told us that most of her vertebrae were fractured, and she was in a lot of pain, and they were switching from treatment to pain management. So, but they were willing to discharge her, and I was kind of excited because by this time she had a feeding tube. Maybe we could get some of the natural cancer fighters into her through the feeding tube. But she was pretty weak. I think the liver was shutting down at that point. But she was telling me on the Saturday that someone came to pray with her, and they said, if it's your time, it's okay, you can go. Well, first of all, that person shouldn't have been saying that without the family members present. That's not their responsibility. That's not their right to say something like that, especially if she checked out then and there. I would have been like, what were you thinking? But she said to me, she said, I was kind of completing her sentences. They said, you can go if you want. And she's like, yes. And I said, is because it's your time? That's what she was saying. And I said, is it your time? She's like, absolutely not. She always said she's got things to do. She has to raise this baby. So even on the Saturday, which was 3 days before she passed, she was fighting. Well, 2 days before she passed. On the Sunday, our adopted mom and family came to visit her, and she woke up and she smiled and recognized them, and when they left, she's like, I don't want them to go. And then on the Monday, I think I stayed with her that night, the Sunday night. She was doing okay. She was basically out of it because of the pain meds. I went home for a few hours, came back in the evening, and she was kind of gasping for air, and within a few hours she was gone. So, okay, so that's the story of her passing. Yeah, so kind of devastating. I was in the room for about an hour with her after she was gone. Kind of even when she was going, I was yelling at her. You come back here. You got an 18-month-old to raise. It was 18 months at that point, or 16 months, 16-month-old to raise. The nurse is like, let her go. The nurse was a piece of work. She was a treat. She says to me, I think she's actively dying. I'm like, oh, okay. Actively dying, huh? How wonderful. I need to write a letter to the nursing supervisor and say, can you work on bedside manners a little bit, please? Because, she could have said something along the lines of, I think she's going. Would have been the same message as with a whole lot less sharpness. Anyway, things that happen. Just sharing. So anyway, yeah, this was the Monday before Thanksgiving, 2015. And we actually went to a Thanksgiving dinner, and it was everyone. Nobody said anything to us, not even, so sorry, whatever, just hugs. And I guess, people don't know what to say. And I'll try and wrap it up because I don't know how long this has been recording. My counter doesn't work on my, it's been an hour. Okay. I hope this is, informative. I just wanted to share the story with those of you that have supported us through this, as well as those that might glean something from our experience. I think I'll wrap it up here and just say that, the first 3 months have definitely been torturous. My son and I went on a trip to Virginia, which is where she had spent some of her years from high school on. And her and I had done a similar trip in 2012 for our second anniversary, and we hit a lot of those same spots, and that was pretty torturous because it's like, she should be here for this trip. This should be a celebration of healing trip, but I guess you could say ultimately she was healed, and she is now with Jesus, and she is out of it. She doesn't have to put up with this crazy world, and it's spiraling out of control. And I'll share more on the next time, because this has been ridiculously long and I've been rambling. Thanks for listening. But I just want to share with you that do you know where you're going when you stop breathing? And just think about that, because eventually you will stop breathing, and you need to know where you're going. And what do you base that on? If you base it on, well, I'm a good person, I'll go to heaven, where do you get that from? That's just like folklore. That's hearsay. If you believe in heaven, then you must believe that the Bible is the author of that information, and the Bible also tells you that you don't go to heaven unless you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior. And it's pretty simple. You can pray a prayer right now saying, God, I'm sorry for my sins. Please forgive me. Come into my life. Change me. And I accept that Jesus died on the cross to pay for my sins, because sin is what separates us from God. So it's just that simple. And if you pray that prayer, I would encourage you to get a Bible, start reading it, get into a church that teaches the Word, and when they teach, make sure what they're teaching is what it says in the Bible, and I'll see you in heaven. So I think that's it. That's enough so's for today. Please leave comments. Tell me anything you'd like to hear more about. I know I kind of rambled on for a long time here, but this is partially for my son to see, and in his years growing up, especially if I'm not around, he gets to hear the story in detail. But also I wanted to share some of the detail to try and help somebody else in this situation. So please go and get checked. If you don't believe in mammograms, look into thermal imaging. Thermal imaging for breast examination. It's about $200, and it could save your life. All right, so thank you, God bless you, and go with God. Vaya con Dios. Bye.